Most operators know they need to delegate. They have known it for months, maybe years, and the reason they have not done it is not laziness, it is not lack of discipline, it is one belief that sounds completely rational until you actually do the math on it. The belief? They cannot afford to, and the math says something different. The business that cannot afford to delegate is almost certainly spending more than the cost of delegation on owner time doing tasks that do not require the owner, every week, without tracking it, without knowing it. The real cost, the one no one is measuring. This is no book of a COO. If you are building a business and you want operational thinking instead of motivational content, subscribe now. This show is not about hustle. It is about the systems that actually scale businesses. Season 2. Let's keep going. So what does delegation actually look like when you are running lean? It does not mean hiring a full-time employee. It does not mean outsourcing your entire business. It means finding the tasks on your plate right now that do not require your specific skills, your specific relationships, or your specific judgment, and getting those tasks off your plate. That is it. What most operators have instead is different. They have a to-do list that only one person can execute. A business where every function routes back to the owner, not because they want it that way, because they never built the path to hand anything off. The result? Every task waits for one person, and a business that relies on one person to execute everything is not a scalable business. It is a dependency dressed up as a company. Here's what last Tuesday looked like for a lot of operators watching this. 47 minutes spent scheduling a client call, not because the scheduling was complex, because there is no calendar link that handles it automatically. 20 minutes tracking down an invoice status, not because the invoice was unusual, because there is no system for where invoice records live. 35 minutes writing an email from scratch to a client asking the same question 3 other clients asked last month. No template, every word written new, again. By 4 p.m, the work that actually moves the business forward had not been touched, and the day ended late. That is not a capacity problem. That is not a revenue problem. That is a triage problem, and triage problems have a specific operational fix. So what do you actually delegate first? Not what sounds most exciting to hand off, not what you hate most, what costs the most time relative to the skill it actually requires. Start here. The tasks on your plate right now can be sorted into 3 rungs. Rung 1 is administrative overhead, scheduling, inbox sorting, data entry, file organization, status update emails, invoice tracking, appointment confirmations, tasks where the required skill is following a clear process, not your judgment, not your expertise, not your client relationships, just the process. This is the rung most operators want to skip. They want to jump straight to delegating something interesting. That is the wrong call. And here's the math. Research from Atlassian found that the average knowledge worker spends 31 hours per month on administrative and low-value tasks. For a business owner filling every operational gap, that number is almost always higher. The fix for Rung 1 costs less than $500 a month. A part-time virtual assistant working 10 to 15 hours per week handles everything at this rung. The prerequisite is 1 page per task, not a manual, not a training program, 1 page per task describing exactly what done looks like. The business that says it cannot afford a $500 per month VA is almost certainly spending more than $500 worth of owner time on Rung 1 tasks every single month. The cost was always there. It was just invisible because it showed up on the calendar instead of an invoice. But here's what happens when operators clear Rung 1 and stop there. They get the time back, and they fill it right back up. Not because they are doing anything wrong, because the next layer of delegatable work is still sitting on their plate and there is no system to move it. Rung 2 is repeatable client-facing tasks, follow-up sequences, onboarding steps, status updates, intake forms, scheduling confirmations, proposal delivery, tasks that touch clients but follow a predictable pattern. The mistake most operators make is treating client-facing as owner-required. It is not. Clients do not need you for every interaction. They need you for the interactions that require your judgment. the touch points that follow a script you already have in your head. Those can be handled by a part-time coordinator or contractor once the process is written down. Rung 2 runs between $500 and $1,500 a month. Same prerequisite as Rung 1, a documented process. And here's the part most operators miss. Rung 2 is where businesses lose clients they could have kept, not because the service was bad, because the follow-up did not happen, because the onboarding felt disorganized, because the client had to chase someone down for a status update. The failure mode? Not a quality problem, a systems problem. And a systems problem is always fixable before the next client walks in the door. Rung 3 is where most delegation advice begins, which is exactly why most delegation advice does not work. Rung 3 is skilled execution, bookkeeping, content production, graphic design, delivery support, specialized service components, tasks that require genuine expertise. This rung runs $1,500 and up per month, and it fails every time an operator tries to access it before rungs 1 and 2 are stable. Here's the mechanism. If your admin overhead is still consuming your mornings and your client-facing processes are still routing back to you, then the capacity a Rung 3 hire creates gets absorbed immediately. You are not less busy. You are just busy in different ways. The delegation ladder only works in order. Sequence is the system. Rung 1 creates the margin for Rung 2. Rung 2 creates the margin for Rung 3. Skip a rung and you skip the margin that makes the next one sustainable. The operators who try to delegate out of sequence always end up in the same place. More cost, same bottleneck. So what actually changes this? One exercise. This week. The time audit. For the next 5 business days, log every task you touch. Not a detailed journal, a running list. The task, how long it took, and one of 3 labels. Rung 1 could be handled with a clear process and no specialist skills. Rung 2, client-facing but predictable and processable. Rung 3 requires your specific expertise or judgment. At the end of 5 days, you have a diagnosis. Most operators find that 40 to 60% of their week lives in rungs 1 and 2, which means 40 to 60% of their week is potentially delegatable right now. Not next year, not after the next revenue milestone, right now. Your one action from the audit is not to delegate everything at once. It is to find the single highest volume Rung 1 task on your list. Write a 1-page SOP for that task this week. That is your starting point. Not a hiring plan, not a budget overhaul. One SOP, one task, 1 week. If you want the SOP template and the full delegation ladder framework already built, that is inside the operator hub. If you are ready to build the entire operator layer across your business, including delegation systems, decision frameworks, and vertical specific curriculum, the Operator Academy is where that work gets done. Links are in the description. Here is your one move out of this episode. This week, run the time audit. 5 days, a running task list, 3 labels. At the end of the week, find your highest volume Rung 1 task and write 1 page on exactly how it gets done. If you already know what that task is without running the audit, drop it in the comments below. Just name the task. Seeing what everyone answers will tell us something real about what is actually holding operators back across the board. If this episode gave you something useful, share it with one operator in your world who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you have not. We are building here. Season 2 is moving. Wherever you are, that is exactly where you are supposed to be. But that does not mean you have to stay there. Until next time.